Hi, welcome to Bright Hope Creations. I'm Kara, and today we're getting squirrely about a new job promotion. So we're going to feature the Virtual Friends add-on, Let's Go Nuts, Happy Hugs, Virtual Friends, the lamp from You're Just My Type, Wheee from Really High Five, books from Den Sweet Den, the stitched thought bubble frames. I cut out two of the larger ones in white, the slimline simple Grassy Hillside stencil, the cloudy stencil. The sentiment will be a combination of Simply Sentiments, Year 10, All the Clouds, and Milo's ABCs. I'm using Lawn Fawn's jet black ink, and I have a bunch of characters and accessories loaded up in my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp those out on some white cardstock. I'll stamp out a second chair, and I stamped out two banners from the Virtual Friends add-on, but I'm actually going to stamp those out using clear ink and heat emboss them on the front panel of my card. So I'll pick up the stamp on my acrylic block, ink that up, and stamp it down. I'm going to stamp one on the left upper corner, and then I'm going to stamp it again on the right upper corner. And that will indicate that we are celebrating. We have a party going on. And then here is the word we from Really High Five. And I curved it on my acrylic block so that it followed the curve of the banners, and stamping that in the corners. And now I'm going to take my white embossing powder and sprinkle that on, and then I will heat that to melt it. That way I can ink over that and it will show up white. Creating an outdoor scene today, and I'm starting with the Slimline Simple Grassy Hillside stencil, and I'm using Mowed Lawn and Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide inks. And look at that grass. It kind of reminds me of the Lawn Fawn logo. Which I suppose that's what we're going for. So the nice thing about this stencil is there are grid lines, so I know exactly where to place it back on my paper. I didn't really even have to work too hard to get those blades of grass matched up. And I'm using some blueprint sketch for the start of the sky. And now I'm taking the cloudy stencil, and I've got some wilted violet, and I'm going to start on my stencil and go up onto the paper. Now obviously this is more than double time, so speed blending. And then I'm taking that blueprint sketch and bringing it up to meet the wilted violet, and then put a little more wilted violet on the next line of clouds, and come in with some picked raspberry. So I'm just building up the color from one to another by inking it with the stencil and then coming back and blending it a little more from one bank of clouds to the next. So from the picked raspberry, I'm going to put a little extra picked raspberry on there, and then come in with some carved pumpkin, and then end with just carved pumpkin. But I think I had some ripe persimmon on this blending brush, because that looks a little darker to me, but that's all right. I like it. It's one of those happy accidents. Well, I am taking some water and getting the color out of the banners. I'm going to color those with Copic markers a little later on. So I want to make sure that they are as white as I can make them. So lifting it out, and now I'm just wiping the excess ink off of the white embossing. And this leaves us with a blended rainbow sky, which will mostly go away. So I'm going to cut it out. I'm tracing along the inside of my stitched thought bubble frame, and I'm just going to create a large hole there, and then come in with my scissors and cut away on the outside of that line, because I want the frame to cover that up. And I've got a lot of leeway because the frame will cover whatever, so I don't have to be too clean and careful with that. So there's my frame, and I'm going to do that with the note card as well. So the front of the note card. So this will create an opening on the card so that we can put in a spinner. When I first saw that Lawn Fawn came out with an office chair, I was thrilled. First of all, just thrilled. But secondly, realizing that it could be used as the front or back of the chair, well, that's genius. So versatile, and what a great way to make a spinner where you have the front and back of the chair. All right, my thought bubble holes match up, and I can glue the frame onto the front using my Lawn Fawn glue tube, and then I'm going to set this aside and work on coloring the images. And I cut out a lot of the purpley pink in the center of that card, so I thought I'd bring it back in the chair. So this is a RV63, and I'm just coloring the whole chair up first. And if you notice, I use like swirling motions in my coloring so I don't have streaky lines. Coming in now with the RV66, and that is a lot darker than that RV63. So when I come back to blend these two, I'm going to do the tip-to-tip technique to blend them in order to get a nice transition between the two colors. Then I'll finish blending that out with the RV63, and I did that for the armrests and the seat of the chair as well. So now I want to bring in a little more of the blue violet at the bottom, because there's some blue violet missing out of the center of that card as well, and this just gives a hint of that, and blend that in then with the rest of the RVs. Now on to the squirrel. So I'm starting with an E21, and I just colored his whole body with that E21. Usually I'll start out with just where I want shadows with my lightest color, but I was kind of a maverick today and just colored everything. So I'm starting my shadowing with the next color up, which is an E23, giving him some depth around the eye and just every nook and cranny where it would be a little darker, kind of giving him some shape there, some roundedness. And then I'll blend that back into the lighter color using that E21, and then start on with my next darkest color, and this one's an E25. And just going in the same areas that I had put that E23s, just building up the color, building up those shadows, making sure that all those nooks and crannies have that bit of depth to them. We're going to have a variety of squirrel species on the card today. So here is our brown squirrel, and that's the technical name, right? The brown squirrel. Just darkening him up a little bit more now with the E27, and I really just stayed in one color family for him. So those E20s, and E27 is as dark as I went for that, and now I'm just blending that back into his body with the E23 and the E21. And boy, with his arms raised like that, I just thought he was the perfect character to sit in the chair and have spinning around. Well, our other two squirrels are going to be a variety of gray squirrel. And with this first guy, I started with a base of cool gray, and I'm putting in the shading with a warm gray, just giving him a little bit of both. I like to do that with a lot of the woodland creatures because they don't all have just one color in them. Some of them have a real variety. And so now just darkening him up with the W3, giving him some depth so you can see the snout is in front and his eyes are set back a little bit, blending that in with the W1. And then I'm adding the E41, which is a brown, but it is kind of a gray brown. So that just changes him up even more. You can see the squirrel to the right, and he is much browner, or this has a very different look than a straight gray squirrel over there. So getting some more shading in. Here's the W4, and I think that's as dark as we go here on this little guy. Gonna blend all that in with that E41, and he's set to go. Now I did shade the other guy, but mostly in just warm grays and cool grays. I didn't use any E's, and you can see the difference between those two guys. So now onto that lamp, and I'm using a BV00 and 01 to do my shading. And then I'm coming in with my darkest one, the BV04. Now I colored all the other accessories. The desk was in E21s, but I will show you the colors that I chose for those accessories as we go through the flags, because I'm using the same colors in those flags at the top of the front panel. All right, just blending in the rest of that lamp. And I'll shade the light bulb a little bit with the C0. And now I'm going to start on those banners. So the first one, the center, is going to be that RV63 that I used in the chairs. A little bit of RV66 on the side to shade that, and then blend that out with the 63. The BV00 for one of the flags with the BV04, and I'm blending that with the BV01. Got a little on the white, so I just use a colorless blender to take that off, using a B12 and 14 to color another flag. And then the last flag on either side is going to be a YG05 and shaded with the YG09, and that's the color I used in the plant. And the only other ones that aren't on there are the oranges, and those are YR00, an R02, and an R05. So just in case you're interested in the colors that I chose. Well, now for that back of the screen, and I'm keeping it pretty simple with a B12, shaded in the B14 and blending that out with the B12. And then at the very bottom, I'm going to add in some BV04 and then blend that all back up the way it came. So the B14 and then the B12. And that's our background, our blue screen for this squirrel here. I'm going to cut them all out using my die cut machine with the coordinating dies. So there they all are. And here they all are ready to go. Now you can see this one squirrel is only colored on his tail, and that is the guy that I'm going to use to make the back of my brown squirrel's tail. It matches perfectly, kind of like a flip-flop stamp, but just a portion of a flip-flop. And that's all we need. The only part of the squirrel that we see on the back is his tail. So we're going to glue that together, and then he's all set to sit in his chair and spin around. All right, here he is sitting there, and now we need to put the back onto the back of the chair. And the only thing that is not symmetrical here is the little mechanism handle at the bottom. So I'm just going to take that off of one side. Now this chair reminds me of the 80s because it's mauve. I remember in the 80s, I had a mauve prom dress. I mean, a big puffy kind. Yeah, that was the 80s. But I remember our church got these new mauve colored chairs, and boy, I thought they were so pretty. All right, well, I covered the rest of that stem off with some white gel pen, and now I'm cutting my string the length, it's longer than my card, and that's all it needs to be. And I'm putting some strong double-sided tape. This is 1/4 inch tape from Fawn on both sides of the string. So kind of going to sandwich it in there. So it'll be nice and tight, not going to go anywhere, not going to slip out. So here's the second piece of double-sided tape. And woo, there it spins. Take off that release paper, add a little bit more tape so that I can sandwich the two chairs together. Now the handle that I cut off of one chair, I'm going to replace it on the other side and just put a little glue down, put that handle in there, and no one will be the wiser, just you and me. We know. So I'm gonna just put a little line with a pen going down the same way, and voila. We're all set to go. Yeah, I did not want to cut that little handle part off because I think it's a fun detail to have on that card. All right, time to glue our squirrel onto his seat. He'll be glued to his seat. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say. Terrible pun, but I said it anyway. So, all right, now to get that spinner secured to the card, I'm going to take some double-sided tape, add it to the front of the card, and place that string in there. Make sure that he is exactly where I want him, in the center of the thought bubble, and then sandwich that string in there just like I did in the chair. I added some tape on the bottom as well, put my string in there and sandwich it in. And now I can put some adhesive on the front panel, the back of the front panel, and add that to the front of the card. I want to make sure my thought bubbles line up just right. And then I want to add a frame on the inside of the card too, because I want to make sure that it's nicely finished off. Now this thought bubble is not symmetrical, so I'm going to use the back of the die cut, and it's going to look fine because I'll take my bone folder and burnish it down so it won't look like the backside of a die cut. It's nice and smooth, and I'm just going to glue that in there and make sure that it lines up with the front frame, and it's all set. So now I can clip off the little strings at the top and bottom, and they're well secured within the two panels, the front of the card and the front panel. And now I can add the little squirrel who is thinking about the coworker or friend who got the promotion. So here are the little bubbles going up to the thought bubble. I'll add a little foam tape to the back of the squirrel so that he has a little bit of dimension there. And then it's time to prepare this office for the squirrel. Maybe it's his cubicle. I used the largest outside-in stitched rectangle to cut out this wood grain and also a piece of perfectly plaid remix from the 6x6 paper pack. And I put in the wallpaper and add that wood grain floor, and then the little piece that I cut it out from. Because the stitching is on both sides, I thought I'd use this little edge as my baseboard. So I cut that to size and I'll glue that on, and it has a little stitching to it. Time to move in the furniture. We have our desk, glue that on, and I want to make sure that it's at a good position with the chair. So I'll look at that through the thought bubble, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with the position of that. So I can add the monitor, and he must be in a meeting right now with this other squirrel. I wonder what that squirrel is thinking about him spinning around in his chair. Well, he's probably happy for him for his new promotion. Or he's thinking, how did this squirrely guy get promoted before me? Well, all right. Who knows what he's... I know it's just images on a card. I gotta have fun with it. All right, arranging his stack of books to the side, and little mouse there for his desk. glue everything down. Got a nice plant for his office and all his books. And now we need our sentiment. So I'll place the card in my MISTI, and I'm using the congratulations from Simply Sentiments, and I'm using black licorice ink. It's nice and dark, and I'll stamp that twice. And then this is Your Way and On Point, and I cut them out and I put them together, and I have On Your. And it's the same font as that congratulations, so that really worked out well. And now with Milo's ABCs, I'm finding my center letter, and I'm going to pick that up on the MISTI door, swing that around, and add the letters around that center one. It's much easier for me to add them to the door because they stick and they don't move around. And so I'm spelling out the word promotion, and there we go. It's all together, and I want to center that, make sure that it really is in the center. So I'm moving my card around a little bit. It's okay if it's off the MISTI a little bit because it'll still stamp well. And here we are. There's promotion. Congratulations on your promotion. All right, well, let's put this into action. So here's our little guy. Gonna wind him up quite a few times, and once we let him go, let's see what happens. Whee! He couldn't be happier about his new promotion, and I hope you enjoyed the video today and it inspired you to make a spinner card or just a little office for a squirrel friend. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!